When Ark Survival Evolved was first released in the summer of 2015, it was a vastly different game. With no boss fights, no element, and limited to only one map, it is almost unrecognisable from the version of Ark we see today. Back then we only had a small fraction of the creatures available to us now, and one of these was the Raptor. Despite being one of Ark's oldest and most beloved dinos, there's no doubt that the Raptor has been slightly overshadowed by pretty much anything that's come after it. Well, I wanted to change that, so I set myself a goal. I had 100 days to beat Ark Survival Evolved with just the assistance of Raptors. Here's how it went. Oh, and while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel with notification bells turned on, of course. Give me a follow over on Twitch, where I actually streamed a good portion of this video live. And also, come join the Rampy community Discord. Thanks. We started off this challenge by spawning on the beaches of West Zone 2, also known as Crags Island. I then decided to focus on getting some early game levels, so got the 4x Explorer note that was nearby, followed by a couple more Explorer notes. I wasn't exactly sure what to level on this challenge, as I would be spending most of it riding around on Raptors. Looking back on it now, let's just say I would have probably leveled myself a bit differently. You'll see why later. Anyway, after getting some early game levels, we crafted up some basic tools, such as a hatchet and a pick, before moving over to the nearest mountain, which had some metal spawns. From there, the main focus was getting a refining forge up and running, and getting as much metal smelted up as possible, which I would then use to make the early game essentials. After getting some metal going, I quickly made up a smithy, and then made a metal pick, which allowed me to farm metal at a much faster rate than I had previously been able to. As the morning of day 2 dawned, I made myself a mortar and pestle, so that I could start making up some trank arrows in case I stumbled across any nearby raptors. After farming some narco berries for a bit, and splitting some meat, I was actually able to make a decent amount of narcotics, especially considering a raptor wouldn't take too many arrows to knock out. As I finished making the arrows, I then made myself a crossbow, before I stumbled across something very interesting indeed. Oh, is that a 125 I see? Oh, it is! Oh no, leave me alone, darling. Right, let me kill this Darlo. I don't think that Raptor's got anything like exceptional stat-wise. So just down the hill from the base, I managed to find a level 125 Raptor. While I expected this to just be an early game mount to get around on, what I failed to realise was that this Raptor actually had an incredibly high health stat, especially for its level. No, he does. This Raptor has 31 points in HP. That's mental. That's crazy. Like, has he just hit my Raptor? He better not have. About to eat? Yeah, he's about to eat. Come on, what's he come out with? No, I cannot believe that. I cannot believe what I'm just witnessing. This is actually incredible. I've never seen luck like it. The first 125 Raptor I've just knocked out and it's come out with 48 points in HP. When the Raptor tamed up, he managed to gain 17 extra levels in HP, which for only a 125 was incredibly lucky. Normally when you start a breed line, you don't want to go below 40 points in the key stat you're looking for, but to get 48 points is rare from a 150, let alone a 125. This was a fantastic start to the challenge, especially considering the island dino levels are pretty poor for the most part. After taming the Raptor up, I made myself a set of flak, and set off along the beaches of the south, with no particular goal in mind. I hadn't decided on a base spot as of yet, so I was working this one out as we went along. I did bump into quite a few Raptors along the way, but none that were quite what I was looking for, level or stat wise. This was until I stumbled across this level 140 with 24 points in melee. Generally speaking, 24 points in melee before tame isn't anything too incredible, but considering it was the island, I decided to knock it out and see what we got. Hang on, what gender is it? Is it a male? Oh, it's a male. Okay, so either way, whatever this is, I'm going to be keeping it because I need to get this HP stat on a male. So if it has like a decent melee stat for the moment, all the better. Please, good melee. 36 points. Do you know what? 36 points is not bad. 36 points is really not bad at all. 48 and 36 points within the first 3 days of this challenge. Yeah, I'll take that any day. I'll take that any day of the week. Yes, I know. I've just been harping on about how you shouldn't start a breed line with under 40 points in the key stats, but in this case, especially considering how high the HP stat we got was, I figured 36 points wasn't the worst starting point. After travelling north for the best part of a day, we eventually arrived at the area most commonly known as the Hidden Lake, or perhaps the Oasis. I'd never actually built here before, so I decided it was fitting that this spot, that was shown in the first ever Ark Survival Evolved trailer, would be my base spot. So I set to work on making my glorious wooden box that I would spend the next 96 days in, and I also mated the raptors to get an egg.
Eggs, 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 eggs.
Sadly, the temperature wasn't quite right to incubate it, so I had to leave that for now. I finished off my box by adding a nice raptor-sized dino gate to it, and then added some ceilings to completely enclose myself in. By this time, the temperature change had made it so this raptor egg could finally incubate naturally, so that night we hatched our very first raptor baby. Stat-wise, it was absolutely terrible. But it was a female, which meant it would still be of use to me. I named it 00F and started to raise it up. It's probably about now that we should introduce Rampy's quick guide to breeding. So it's painfully obvious that I will not be able to do this challenge at the current stats we have so far. Thus, I will need to mutate the stats quite a bit first. How many mutations can you get on a dino, you ask? Well, that's actually pretty much unlimited, until you hit the level cap of course, which unofficial is 450 for regular dinos. However, after 20 mutations, the chance of getting one is significantly reduced by what I believe is 50%. Thus, this is the reason why in this challenge I opt to build two separate mutation lines, a HP one and then a melee one, as this then stops the mutations from spiraling out of control and getting over 20 in a very quick period of time. When we are happy with the individual stats, we simply merge them together and then breed what will become our super raptors. The only other thing to add is a term you may see me use a lot during this challenge is 00. This refers to a dino which has 0 mutations on both sides of its ancestry, as this is what you want for breeding. This can either be a tame dino, which is automatically a 00, or a bred dino that has 0 mutations on each side. In this case, the first egg we hatched was a female with 0 mutations on both sides, hence why it was of use to me. Anyway, back to the challenge. After building our beautiful base, it was time to head out on our first metal run. Things like metal runs were some of the more annoying parts of this whole 100 days, as you had no flyer or no Anki, just a pickaxe and a raptor. Nonetheless, we made do and returned home with a small amount of metal to get us started once more. I then continued to breed the raptors, but the only way I could hatch eggs right now was to wait for the optimal time of day, which wasn't a solution long term. I even tried dropping the egg in this water by the lake, but it still wasn't cool enough during the heat of the day. Thus, I accepted I would have to make a fabricator to make some aircons. So once again, I set out on my adventures. Let's maybe we should fill this raptor up with some metal. Oh, that is a giga. Is that a giga? Level 65. Yeah, okay, we're not going that way. That would be a bad idea. This time I had the brain cells to remember to bring a secondary raptor to stack metal onto, but I did fail to reach the top of Crystal Mountain to farm some crystal. Instead, I returned to base as it was now night time and I could finally hatch my eggs. Look at these ones. Right, that's got the melee stat, but it's a male, so that is literally useless. And that is a... Are these both useless? They are both absolutely terrible. Right. Great stuff. After having no luck at all with the raptors and having to kill them, I finally managed to access some crystal via Obsidian Mountain, located directly behind my base. Back at base, I was having a bit of a paste issue, before having a stroke of luck. The beavers in my base location had made a beaver dam. Thanks to the paste and crystal I had collected, I could finally make myself a fabricator. After placing it down, I saw that it was still low on metal and polymer to make an air conditioner, so for the time being I would have to continue hatching my raptors using natural conditions. I did manage to hatch some more on day 7, but I was still struggling to combine the HP and melee stat on a male. Still needed quite a bit of metal, I returned to the mountainside to fill up every raptor I possibly could, and finally I now had enough metal to make all I needed. In order to power the air conditioner, I would need to first make a generator, so I did that, and placed a straight electrical cable down ready to power my aircon. First however, I would also need to farm some polymer, and luckily for me, I had just the source of polymer right next to me, a Hesperornis. Hesperornis actually give a decent amount of organic polymer, so after taking out the beast on my raptor, I harvested it using a club, as my Twitch chat reminded me that this was the best way to farm polymer. With a nice 112 polymer farm from the Hesperornis, I made myself a couple of canteens and bred the raptors, before finally making myself an aircon, allowing me to hatch my eggs at will. Soon after I placed the air conditioner down, we actually got the perfect male with both stats, meaning it was time to start mutation breeding. I also kept any 00 females, as we would need plenty of those to keep the eggs pumping out quickly. And yeah, for the next 2 in-game days, we just hatched raptor eggs, looking for mutations and keeping any females we got as breeders. In between this, I also did a bit of base fortification, with some hefty wooden spikes and some stone dinosaur gateways. That'll keep the gigas out. On day 10, we finally had a good amount of 0-0s ready to go, so I set them up to breed and went to town on hatching raptors. After claiming a ton more 0-0s and murdering all the useless babies using my imprinted raptor, Lightning McQueen, who will become an icon of this challenge by the way, I decided to take a break from breeding after doing it non-stop for about the last 5 in-game days. Down the beaches, through the swamp, in search of our first artifact. The Artifact of the Massive. The Artifact of the Massive is located in the southeast part of the map, and many may refer to it as the Lava Cave. It is one of the more raptor-friendly caves, shall we say, in this challenge, and after choosing to ignore most of the hostiles in the cave and run past them, a couple of nervy jumps later, and we had secured our first artifact of the challenge. After making my way back up out of the cave, I decided while I was exploring the southern regions of the map, I may as well go for my next artifact. So, after swimming across some parts of the ocean, about half a day later, we arrived at the Artifact of the Hunter Cave, commonly known as Self 2 Cave. Another reason I was particularly interested in this cave was because the green cave drops that commonly spawned in here were one of my best shots of getting a raptor saddle blueprint. Not getting a raptor saddle blueprint threatened to be one of the biggest kryptonites of this entire challenge, and I was slightly concerned that when I entered the main room in Self 2, where a nice cave drop normally sits, and found absolutely nothing. I believe this can be an issue with single player sometimes, so I just accepted that I would have to keep coming back. After making my way through the cave, I accidentally ended on the wrong side of the water, and considered crossing it, before thinking better of it. Judging by things that you'll see later on in this video, I think this was a good idea to take the long way around. After running back the way we'd originally came and taking a different route, we grabbed ourselves the Artifact of the Hunter, and the second artifact of this challenge. If you haven't already realised by now, the 2 artifacts we've gathered so far both went towards activating the Broodmother, as this would be the first boss that I had my eye on doing. Returning out of the cave, we spent just under a day travelling back to base, where we continued our hunt for our first mutation. I had now managed to get enough 0-0s to split them up into a melee section and a HP section. For a few in-game days, it was all about mutations. We got off to a good start with this lovely looking blue mutation over here, which is actually a melee mutation, and we are now up to 38 points. Each mutation is a stat increase of 2 points, but double and even triple mutations can also happen. Following on from the melee mutation, we were also fortunate enough to get a HP mutation, and we were now looking at 50 HP and 38 melee as our updated stats. However, after that, to say that our luck dried up was an understatement. We must have gone through over 1,000 raptor eggs without a single mutation on the stats we were looking for. Such luck isn't uncommon once you have passed the 20 mutation mark, but when you are this early in the breed line, I was getting extremely unlucky here. It was around this time that I was also realising how tedious it was checking the stats of each baby, even with the help of the awesome Spyglass mod, which along with the Structures Plus mod is the only mods that I used during this entire run. So with that in mind, I decided to have a look at what I would need to craft an egg incubator. Sadly, it was way too pricey for me at this moment in time, but I decided that going forward, this would be the way to go. In desperation for a mutation, I asked my Twitch chat for some random stuff to do for good luck. It was then that we came up with what would become a common ritual for this challenge, the sacrifice. The basic concept was we placed a gravestone down, named it a sacrifice for the Ark Gods, and then slaughtered the raptor, which was now useless to me. This was in the hope that the Ark Gods would return and bless me with a mutation. The success wasn't exactly immediate, but on the second batch of eggs, we did indeed get our mutation. Check the HPs. We've got it! We've done it! 52 HP, get in. Oh my word. Boys, it's been a long night. It's been a long one. So after finally getting the mutation, the next day, which incidentally happened to be day 20, we set to work on slowly gathering the things needed for an egg incubator. We would need a fair bit of resources for it, including 500 ingots, so I got to work early on that with a quick trip to Crystal Mountain to get some metal. At base, the mutation grind continued, as did Lightning McQueen's levels, as he continued to slaughter baby raptor after baby raptor. Thankfully this time, we didn't have to go through another 1,000 eggs, as we rather swiftly managed to get a melee mutation to 40 melee, which felt like a significant milestone after my earlier comments about starting a breed line with 40 plus points in the key stats. With a 40 melee male growing up, I returned to the top of Crystal Mountain, where I harvested the crystal that I would need to make the incubator. The beauty of the introduction of tech dinosaurs made it that I didn't need to farm silica pearls for the entirety of this challenge, as the raptors actually harvested a decent amount of electronics, so I was sorted on that front. With electronics sorted, it was time to make my first trip into the snow biome, assisted by some sleeping bags in case I died of cold and had to respawn. After travelling through roughly half of the snow biome, I reached a common penguin spawn point in between the Frostfang and Blue Obelisk, and here I was able to harvest enough organic polymer to make an egg incubator. Back at base, we almost had the resources to make the incubator, although we were still a bit low on metal. After waiting for my soul refining forge to finish smelting, I finally made myself an egg incubator, and placed it down outside of base. With the incubator finally made, I went back to breeding the raptors, this time safe with the knowledge I wouldn't have to check 20 raptors all messed up in a pile. Clearly the Ark gods were a fan of egg incubators, as the first egg I looked at was a male with a melee mutation. So after waiting for the egg to incubate, I hatched a new male melee raptor, then got to work on the HP line. The egg incubator was making it far easier for me to quickly check stats, and I've managed to get myself into a nice routine, with 10 females breeding with the melee male, and 10 females breeding with the HP male. After only a couple of rounds of HP eggs, we managed to get ourselves a 54 HP mutation, and once again on a male. I was getting incredibly lucky that these mutations kept coming on males, as it meant I had to spend less time transferring the stat from a female to a male. Now on day 30, we just continued the mutation grind. I had a rough idea in my head that I wanted to get to 60 HP and 50 melee, before combining the stats and taking on the broodmother. Depending on how that went, we would then determine if I felt I needed to further mutate the line, or we would be good to continue fighting the other bosses. Despite primarily focusing on a melee mutation, we ended up getting a HP mutation first, although this time we weren't quite so lucky and it was on a female. Nevertheless, we still hatched it and claimed it, before having to transfer the stats to a male. On the melee side, we weren't having quite as much luck, so we decided to take a quick break from mutation breeding and went in search of the last artifact it needed for the broodmother, the artifact of the Clever. The artifact of the Clever can be located at this cave here, found on the eastern side of the volcano. Inside it's full of general cave-like creatures, and there was nothing in here that worried me too much, although you do have to watch out for the Alphaploras, as this one did manage to break my armour with its spit attack. Despite having no armour left, after disposing of the creatures, I hopped off my raptor to grab the artifact of the Clever. After exiting the cave and returning back to base, I repaired my broken set of flak, then returned to looking for some mutations. Initially, while we seemed to be having plenty of mutations, they just weren't quite on the stats I was looking for. However, a couple of batches of eggs later and we hit the jackpot, once more on the HP line. We were getting really fortunate with our HP mutations, even if it was once again on a female raptor. So I hatched a lovely 58 HP female and let it raise up, while I went back to looking for some melee luck. On day 38 I finally got a melee mute, only for it to be on the starting melee stat and not the updated one. You can see from my consistent punching of the egg incubator that I was rather annoyed at this. To make things worse, I couldn't even seemingly manage to get the 58 HP onto a male, as I still kept getting females in the egg incubator. We then had a bit of an accident in base. I stepped away for a couple of minutes at the worst possible time. The temperature was obviously just right for the raptor eggs to incubate in the wild, so I came back to a load of baby and juvenile raptors running around my base. Thankfully, Lightning McQueen was on hand to deal with the situation. After that rather unfortunate accident, we did finally manage to get the 58 HP on a male, which meant we could once more continue mutating the HP line. Our next mutation would come on the melee line however, and we had now got up to 46 melee. Only 2 more mutations off what I'd wanted before I attempted to combine the stats. The original mutation was on a female, but on day 40 we did manage to get it onto a male at the second attempt. I was then streaming the next couple of days live, and we were not having much luck, so we decided it was time for another sacrifice play. Sure enough, once again, it didn't disappoint. HP eggs, no, oh there we go. Oh, we've done it! Get in! The sacrifice, Joe. The sacrifice. It always works. With such a quick return on our sacrifice play, we decided that there would be no harm in doing it again. Once again, on the second batch of eggs, we got a melee mutation. With 60 HP and 48 melee secured, I was just a sole melee mutation away from being content with starting to breed some boss raptors. And on day 44, we got a melee mutation to 50 points. So, with the stats secured, we were still lacking something very important, a raptor blueprint. With this in mind, I returned back to the Hunter Cave in the southern parts of the map, in the hope of finding a green cave drop there. Sadly, it appeared that drops in this cave still didn't appear to be spawning, which was a blow to my chances of getting a good BP. However, we were not defeated yet. Raptor blueprints could also be found in regular green drops, and although I'm pretty sure there was a higher chance in cave drops, that didn't matter when there were so many green drops around the map. As I found Patchy and Procopston saddles in green drops littered around the map, I was confident that something would give eventually, and sure enough, it did. On what must have been about my 20th green drop, we finally got ourselves a Mastercraft Raptor blueprint. Not only was it a Raptor blueprint, but it was a pretty good one at that. 79 Mastercraft was a decently armoured saddle, although it was slightly pricey on the hide, especially when my only mount to harvest it was a raptor. Returning to base with the blueprint, I got to work on breeding a whole host of boss raptors with the 50 melee and 60 HP. I even managed to get a mutation to 52 melee, but this was no longer what we could class as a clean line, as I had merged the mutation count from the HP and melee lines, meaning I believe this 52 melee female had about 14 or 15 mutations total. I continued to hatch and raise every raptor I got with a HP and melee stat, aiming to get up to 20 raptors, as that is the max amount of dinos permitted in the boss fight. While the raptors raised up at base, I would need to gather a lot of hide to make these Mastercraft saddles, so I thought I would get ahead of the curve a little bit and get some hide farmed up in advance. With the hide back at base, I then immediately started to make the saddles. We would need 20, which would be quite costly, but starting this early would make it seem like a lot less of a chore rather than having to do 20 all at once. We then had to level up our raptors. Now, while I did try killing wild dinos, it became clear that after a while that, along with general passive leveling, the best way to level these things was by slaughtering their own babies. So that's what we did. Over the course of the next 10 days or so, I couldn't tell you how many raptor babies were slaughtered. I leveled them to about 20k HP and as much melee as I could. This meant that they had quite a bit of healing to do. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem, but as I didn't have the luxury of a pig or a snow owl to heal them with, it made things a little bit more difficult. So with no option but to wait for Father Time to heal them, I trekked off once more into the snow biome to get some polymer to make some cryopods. On the way back I was feared by Yuti, which is a lovely little reminder that Yuti's one-hit fear raptors. No foreboding here at all, I swear. The reason I decided to make cryopods was simply because I didn't fancy getting all the raptors on follow to every single obelisk. On single player, each boss has a designated obelisk, with the broodmother being green, the dragon red, and the monkey at blue ob. So I'd be forced to move the raptors after each boss. With the cryopods made, it was time to check up on the raptors, who had actually healed pretty well, and most were sitting at about 75% of their max HP. I made the final few saddles, and started to cry up the raptors, ready for our first boss. I took the journey down the east coast beaches, towards Green Obelisk, and once there, I threw out all our raptors. They were of course cryosick, but I calculated previously that they would wake up in about 8 in-game hours, which was nothing in the grand scheme of things. With the raptors now awake, it was time to take on the first boss of this 100-day challenge. Right. Get him, lads! Oh my... Boys, they're absolutely melting it. We're absolutely melting it. At least I think we are. I don't know how they're doing HP wise. New art meta. New art meta. Wow, okay. So, yeah. It turned out that the broodmother was no issue at all. These raptors were something else entirely. In fact, the saddles that I'd spent ages farming made no difference. Anyway, it was important not to get complacent, as we had much harder challenges ahead. Following on from the broodmother fight, it had just rolled over into day 60, and we were close to the cave containing the artifacts of the pack, so I decided to go looking for it. After spending a good 5 minutes searching, as this cave can be quite difficult to find at times, we finally located it and entered the cave. Now there are 2 ways to get to the artifact of the pack. One is with grapples. One is by swimming through 3 tunnels. If you come to do this cave, please bring grapples. Do not do what I did. I did not have grapples. And I did not have a fun time in this cave at all. If I'd actually used my brain for a second, I probably would have said, sod it, we'll come back another day with grapples. Instead, I decided to swim off into the piranha and sarco infested tunnels like a lunatic. Go for it. Right, is that... Oh no! Oh, we're so screwed. We are so screwed. No! Ah! Get me out! This cave is the most dangerous thing I've done on this challenge so far. After successfully navigating my way through the first part of the tunnel, I ran into a small issue. I was freezing to death rapidly, and I couldn't even find a single place to place my sleeping bag as it was over water. With nothing I could do, I ended up dying in here. I returned to the cave with a spare boss raptor I'd forgotten to bring to the broodmother fight, so I had a good mode of transport at least. After reaching the cave, I finally made my first good decision of the day, which is to make a foundation and a bed outside of the cave, so that hopefully, should I be able to reach the same place as last time, I would be able to place a foundation and bed down. Yeah. Oh, please no. Please no. Okay, we're not drowning at least. Foundation. Bed. We're alive. We are alive. Alright. So, yeah, the bed I'd made outside the cave absolutely saved me. But my troubles in this cave weren't quite over just yet. Oh, for God, no. No, leave me alone. Please. Die. One more. Okay, Sarko's dead. We're good. After successfully managing to make it through the second tunnel, we only had one more to go. And after a quick die and respawn, we had our health back, and it was time to take on the last section. Things could have gone very wrong here. When I saw this level 125 Sarko, I did fear the worst, but thankfully I managed to dodge his attack, which would have taken me off the Raptor, and we took him out. With the artifact of the pack finally secured, I made a vow to my Twitch chat to never ever return to this cave again. Thankfully, exiting the cave is a lot easier than coming in. I didn't have to go through the tunnels again. This of course did mean that the poor boss Raptor who had saved me was left stranded in the tunnels, but I'm sure it'll be alright. On the way back to base, I proved that where Rampy is, entertainment isn't far off. I may have been using the slow-mo command, which just makes the world go by a little faster, which of course also means the days do, so it's not cheating or anything. But this might have meant I didn't see these micro-raptors in front of me, and I was taken off my raptor and killed. I think this was a personal favourite moment of the stream chat, it has to be said. Luckily, I did manage to return and grab my bag, which had all the raptors in it. The green light wasn't showing up for me, and as the Broodmother trophy was also in my inventory, I was starting to think I was about to have to do it all over again. Thankfully, this wasn't the case, and we arrived back at base with the Broodmother trophy safe. With the pack artifact collected, I was still missing 2 artifacts to do the Megapithecus boss. One of them was the artifact of the Devourer, located in the cave on Carnivore Island in the northeast section of the map. After the adventures of the pack cave, this one was a far more straightforward process, although can we just take a minute to admire the balls of this dismount right here? Or stupidity, depends how you want to look at it. After a quick sleeping bag death again to regain my health, I exited the water and swam back to mainland using my raptor. The joys of this challenge. With the Devourer secured, I made some scuba, as I geared myself up for the biggest challenge I'd faced so far. Making it past Microraptor River. That's because I got 4 scuba tanks on me. Oh, it's an alpha carnet. Okay. Oh, no, that's a Microraptor. No, get... Right, boys. There's just absolutely no need, is there? So, after being killed once again, thanks to this absolutely beautiful dino, we had to return with a second raptor to grab my kit. I also then had to run all the way back to base to repair my armour, before finally reaching the area where the artifact of the Brute is located. Going into this challenge, the 2 water caves were probably my worst nightmare, honestly. The issue with raptors is they're not exactly great in the water, which meant for this one I could either make a scuba raptor, or simply try get it with scuba gear. I did level oxygen on my character a few times, which is meant to make you faster in the water, with this specifically in mind. So, after entering the Brute Cave, I immediately died to eels at the first turning. Not ideal, but I decided I would have one more go, and see how far we could get before trying to think of a new plan. Luckily for me, the bit where the eels were had 2 pathways, one with eels and one without eels. Safe to say I chose the pathway without the eels the second time. So far, it seemed the only issue was the eels, as everything else, I was just faster than. I did have to be extra careful though, as one hit from any of these creatures and I would probably insta-die. Okay, so this is the other land bit, so we can run up here. We might actually be able to get this artifact, because it's literally just in the pool below, but if there's any eels in there, we can't get it. And if I'd put sleeping bags now, that would have been a lot better. Right, so we got another explorer now, yeah. I don't really know why I'm getting these, but... Right, what are we looking like below? Oh, that's eels. I'd successfully made it into the main room of the Brute Cave, where the artifact was located. The only issue was... these things. I was sure that they would spot me if I went for the artifact, but what choice did I have? I decided to try it. Right, let's go for it. Don't aggro, please don't aggro, please don't aggro. Go. Oh, boys, we might be good. We might be good. Oh, we might have done it. And indeed, we had done it. We managed to escape the rest of the cave without so much of a scratch on us, and I was very satisfied camper as I made my way back to my raptor. With all the artifacts secured, back at base, I cried up the raptors once more and set off to Blue Obelisk, full of confidence that we had this in the bag. Once I reached Blue Ob, I threw the raptors out and waited for them to wake up through the night. You would think that the fact that I had to incubate myself like a wyvern egg at Blue Ob would be a sign that perhaps I shouldn't go into this boss fight in primitive hide armour without any med brews, but at the time, I clearly saw no issue with it. Anyway, on day 67, we started the countdown. and got ready to take on the Megapithecus. Anyone who's done this boss fight knows before that there's a... At least I'm pretty sure there is, unless they fixed it. There's a glitch where they can be knocked off the edge here. How much... Are we losing HP fast? Oh my god, boys, we are. Boys, we need to go. We need... Oh, no. No. We're going to die in the boss fight. We're going to die in the boss fight. 100%. Ah! Nice. Yeah. We're going to be rebreeding. Oh, I'm going to have to get it. Oh, we should have waited for the heat of day, shouldn't we? Why was it so cold in here? Well, the reason we failed this is not because of the Raptors. They can definitely do it. But because I didn't either have... Yeah, I need to make med brews. That was it, really. I said at the start, like, I should make med brews before I do anything. So yeah, we died. I had to breed all of the Raptors, make all of the saddles, and grab all of the artifacts, all over again. It wasn't ideal, but we persevered, and in no time I had a brand new Raptor army raising up. The issue was that we'd once more have to level them, wait for them to heal up, and bring them all the way to Blue Obelisk once more, before we could even think about going to the Red Obelisk for the dragon. There was no doubt that the Megapithecus incident had set us back, and while up to this point I'd thought I had ample time to complete this challenge, it was now certainly a race against the clock. One of the first things that I wanted to make sure was still possible was retrieving the Brute artifact, found in the water cave we saw earlier. Luckily for me, the dino spawns seemed to have all remained the same, and there were no new eels to surprise me, which meant that I could once again grab the artifact of the Brute with no issues. On the way out, however, I did notice this mosasaur just chilling with his head in the wall. It seemed he hadn't seen me, and while I wasn't complaining, I have no idea if he was there the first time or if he was a fresh spawn or not. Returning back from the complete opposite side of the map for the second time, we had reached day 70, and I went to the nearby snow biome to farm up some pelt to make some fur armor with. Early on in this video, I mentioned that I would have changed my stats if I were to know what I did now, and certainly I would have leveled more than 2 points into Fortitude. After making 3 pieces of fur, I immediately put them to use by bringing them along to the artifacts of the pack. You know, the cave I said I was never going to return to. Yeah, that's the one. I don't think anyone was more surprised to see me back than Boss Raptor.
Hello there.
Despite bailing me out previously, we left him there once again. After the pack, we just had the Devourer artifact to go, which was once again a piece of cake. I then rather tediously had to farm up the cryopods once again, as they were also lost in the battle at Blue Ob. While the cryopods were tedious, nothing was as bad as the saddles, and I must have spent about an hour of my life farming hide with a raptor. Not my finest moment. After I made up about half of the saddles, I fancied a change of scenery, and decided to go into the hard water cave. This artifact was used for the dragon, but as my boss raptors were still healing up back at base, I needed to use the time I had left wisely. Also, pro tip for you all if you don't know, if you sit in a chair underwater, you get your stand back. Inside the hard cave, I made sure to stick as close to the ceiling as possible, in an attempt to avoid the eels. Being honest, I had already died a few times in this cave scouting it out, and I'd come to the conclusion that we would need the assistance of a hero. The Oxygen Raptor. Yes, that's right, I'd legitimately leveled one of my raptors back at base into Oxygen. This is because to get the artifact of the Cunning, the artifact found in this cave, you must go through this narrow tunnel, which is full of all kinds of scary stuff. In Ark terms, this cave is often referred to as Hard Cave, while the Brute Cave is referred to as Easy Cave, and this certainly reflected true in this scenario. Thankfully, thanks to the efforts of the Oxygen Raptor, I was able to take out the eels, and swim past most of the mobs to get the artifacts of the Cunning. Sadly, unlike humans, raptors can't sit on chairs, and it appears his efforts in the cave up to this point had left him rather tired. A raptor with stamina is not too awful of a swimmer. A raptor with no stamina is not a good swimmer. In fact, he's so bad that you can't even get away from jellyfish. The moment I was dismounted from my raptor, I knew his days were numbered. So with great regret, I left him to succumb to his fate while I made a beeline for the exit. I believe you can outswim eels when they're swimming after you, but they're so agile if you happen to be swimming in the same direction they're facing, you have absolutely no chance. Anyway, despite dying, the fact we had managed to make it out of the tunnel with the artifact was the main thing. So I returned with another Oxygen Raptor in hand to deal with the eel. This all sounded like a great plan until we entered the cave and a nearby Tuso aggroed on me. Sadly, he just wouldn't let go of the raptor, and that day we lost another hero. With the Tuso and the eel surrounding my body, I decided to make a smart choice for once. Instead of just blindly going for my body, I opted to kite both eel and Tuso far away from my body. With them close by, I standed little chance of being able to retrieve it, but even if it meant certain death, if I could kite them round the next corner, I might have a chance. This actually worked pretty well, and with the eel and Tuso out of sight, I simply returned with a scuba set to grab my body, with the artifact on it. At base, with the new Raptors healed up and ready to go, I made sure to make some medical brews. I wanted to leave nothing to chance this time, as if we failed again, I would have no chance of being able to complete my goal of beating the island in 100 days with just Raptors. Here's how the monkey attempt 2 went. We're dropping fast, but nowhere near as fast. Let's not panic. Let's not panic. We have some med brews. It's gonna be quite close, this, I think. Right, come on. This way, this way, this way. Come with me. 300 health. One med brew. That's it, med brew. Oh, that's beautiful. Right, come on. No, don't throw a rock at me. Come on, over here. It's about now, but I really wish that I'd made some more med brews. Right, passive. Right, wait. Wait for it. And now, get him. Right, okay. Never mind, lads. Don't get him. Right, get him. Boys. I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to be fine. Raptors too strong. Raptors too strong. So, it's safe to say this attempt was a lot better than the first. With the fur armour, I was still losing health, but nowhere near as quickly, as well as being able to regen using med brews. I left the Raptors out of Blue Obelisk to heal, while I went after the artifact of the Skylord, one of the 3 remaining artifacts I needed to do the dragon. If I had grapples, I could be all the way out by now. Another day, another completely avoidable Rampy death. Upon making my way back, it appeared that the bat had actually eaten my body, which meant it had turned it into a bag. I didn't lose too much luckily, as I did have the sense of mind to leave the Megapithecus tribute and the cryopods at Blue Obelisk with the Raptors. So, with the Skylord artifact eventually retrieved, I returned to Blue Obelisk, where I cryoed up the remaining Raptors. I then returned back to base, before taking the long trip to the Redwood biome, where I would aim to get the artifact of the immune, located in the Swamp Cave. Now, to survive in the Swamp Cave, you need to have the right armour on. A full set of scuba will work, as well as ghillie mixed with scuba, and I can only imagine that hazmat suits and tech suits probably work also. However, Arthropluras exist in this cave, and I did not have a fun time in here, when in the final room, the Arthroplura broke my armour. Luckily, I had been smart enough to bring some backups, which meant that I wasn't taking the full damage that the cave gives you. Rest assured, if you do come in here with full flak or naked, you would not survive long. I successfully managed to make it out of the Swamp Cave with a sliver of health left, and with the artifact of the immune safely in my possession. On day 82, I set out to the Island Ice Cave. Wait a minute, why is it just showing the Ark main screen? So I'm not quite sure what happened here, but for some reason OBS didn't fancy recording any Ark past the main screen on this day. I can only apologise, but I promise you that you didn't miss too much, outside of me dying to about 5 different Palovias in the cave. So yes, I am sorry for the loss of this top tier content. With the artifact of the strong retrieve from the Island Ice Cave, I now had all the dragon artifacts in my possession. I repaired my ghillie armour, set up some fresh medical brews, and cryoed the Raptors as I set off towards Red Obelisk. After waiting some time for the Raptors to wake up, we started the dragon fight. Out of all the bosses, this fight was the one I was most nervous for. The dimorphs in here can be quite annoying, as well as the dragon's fireball, which as you can see almost killed me here. The dragon's fire attack also does 20% of the dino's max health, no matter how high the HP is. This simply means that if the dragon lands 5 fire attacks on your dinos, they're dead. Here's how the fight went. Hey lads. Get in, boys. Get in. Yeah, he has a lot more health than the others. No, it's not. It's just because half of them aren't hitting. Why aren't they hitting him? Right, there we go. Alright. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine. He's probably going to get up in a minute though. So, I actually got pretty lucky with this fight. For some reason the dragon landed once during the entire thing and just stayed there. I'm also pretty sure he couldn't actually hit the raptors most of the time when they moved a bit, which was a relief to me, but I wasn't complaining. With all the bosses completed and the trophies collected, it was time to take on the final boss, the Tek Cave and the Overseer. First though, we had some preparation to do. After cryoing all the raptors from Red Obelisk, I stopped by the volcano, where I threw all the raptors out so they could wake up and regen their health, while I went back to base to sort out the last bits I needed for the cave, and to come up with a plan. There were all sorts of things that worried me about the Tek Cave part. The Microraptors, which have become a bit of a channel icon at this point, were pretty common in there, as well as Capros and Utis. To be honest, for this challenge to come to an end at the hands of a Microraptor would have been pretty humiliating, so I came out with a plan. The plan was to have a couple of aggressive raptors in close proximity to me, with ignore group whistles on. When they saw any dinos, they would just aggro on it, and the rest of the neutral pack of raptors would follow them. On my way to the Tek Cave, I was reminded of one major issue that I may face inside. At the entrance of the Tek Cave, I carefully positioned my raptors in exactly the way I wanted to, before activating the cave entrance, and entering the final domain of this challenge. Get in, boys. Get in, boys. Not in the lava. Careful, lads. Alright, that's good, that's good. Alright, that's good. The early signs were that my plan was working. In fact, the aggressive raptors were even taking out Microraptors that I had no chance of seeing. Utis, however, were a different story. Get them, boys. Maul them. Uh-oh. Yeah, this is what we were scared of. Okay, we should be fine. We're running into a wall. Mate, those Utis, man. Right, yeah, UT, get him. Nice. Alright. Oh, they called a Microraptor there as well. That would have been nasty. Capro! Okay, that's another boss raptor dead. So we have lost a couple of raptors. They must have fell in the lava. Oh, there's a UT over there. I do not like him. Alright, get the UT, get the UT. UT, boys, UT. Alright. No, okay, alright. Calm down. No running off the edge. We'd only just entered the cave and I was pretty sure that we had lost a few raptors already, as they had fell in the lava thanks to UT fear. It was becoming clear that UTs were the real threat in here. I was trying to play the cave as cautiously as possible, eager not to be taken off my mount in the middle of proceedings. Things were about to change though. Get in, boys. No, 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 no. Ooh. Okay, we're fine. Alright. And then they just run in and just charge and just kill everything. Oh no, 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 no. Oh, so what I believed happened was the raptors were all following another raptor, which for some reason I was no longer riding. When the UT feared, that raptor then ran into the lava and the rest simply all followed him in. When the dinos are stuck in that lava, there is no way to get them back out, unless you have a tech suit and cryopods. I retraced my steps up the cave and did manage to locate a couple of raptors to help fight my cause. Would it be enough though? On the UT. On the UT. Pull over you. Get in, boys. Right, Megalo. Find Megalo next. UT next. No. No, 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 no. UT! Uh-oh. Boys. Ah, the dream's over. The dream is over. So yes, the dream was over. Or was it? When you open the Tek Cave, unlike activating a boss battle, you don't actually lose the tributes. This means that despite dying in the Tek Cave and losing all the raptors, I did still have all the tributes needed to activate it once more, and I wouldn't have to redo all the bosses. While all the best raptors were certainly now gone, I decided it would be a waste to not use these other raptors that I had at base. So 7 days later, on day 97, we returned to the Tek Cave, with a far weaker group of raptors, it has to be said. To make matters worse, I had not had the chance to refarm all the saddles. So while some of the better raptors did boast Mastercraft saddles, the majority here was stuck with primitive ones. With the bare minimum gear needed, I activated the Tek Cave once more and brought in the raptors. Despite them being significantly weaker, I still managed to have 26 of them, so I thought I would have a good chance of getting towards the end of the cave at least. The boss, however, I didn't have terribly high hopes for. Since we had last come in here also, I had made a couple of important adjustments. The first was binding the attack this target button. This would allow me to signal out any specific dinos I wanted the raptors to attack first, which of course after the first attempt was mainly the UTs. We did run into quite an early scare when the raptors managed to get feared by a UT. I was making sure to stay well back all the time as the fear range on the UT seemed pretty crazy. Despite taking out the UTs, there was no doubt that these raptors were doing significantly less damage than the previous ones, which did make handling some of these dinos a bit of an issue. Nevertheless, it didn't appear that we'd lost many, if any, raptors so far. We eventually reached the same UT which had caused our demise last time, and yeah, it almost managed to kill us again. Quite frankly, we got pretty lucky here that my raptor decided to run into a wall. It probably helped that all the raptors are also no longer following a random unridden raptor, so we didn't lose all the raptors in the lava again. Right at the end of the cave, I ran into a slight or big issue. I was under the impression that Gigas don't spawn in the Gamma version of Tek Cave, and thus had absolutely nothing on me to aggro this thing. Had I even had something along the lines of a crossbow on me, I could have easily kited this thing into the lava. As I didn't have this, my only option was to try and get his aggro and then run him into the lava, the same way I did with this megalo that was standing right next to it. Safe to say I got this horribly wrong, and the Giga absolutely decimated what was left of my raptor pack. The sad thing about this was, had I actually whistled them in, he probably would have done far less damage, as the raptors once they began attacking him did take him out pretty quickly. I'm pretty sure in total he took out about 6 to 8 raptors here, which would have been hugely significant as I attempted to beat the Overseer. After making it through the portal room and putting on my fur armour to try and survive the brutal cold of this cave, we made it to the final room. And yeah, at this point you may notice that my health was plummeting pretty rapidly. To be totally honest, I just wanted to see how these remaining raptors would fare against the final boss, so I may have used my magic wand to conjure up some extra medical brews to help me survive.
A little bit naughty that.
But yeah, in all seriousness, if you are coming to the Tek Cave, level Fortitude or bring good fur / flak armour. It's a lot colder in here than I remembered, but whenever I have done this before, I have been wearing good quality fur or flak, so that's probably why. The boss itself can be an annoying affair, mainly as it constantly dismounts you. The damage is set, so you can only do so much at one time. Damage wise, we seem to be doing pretty good, and there was no doubt that if this was my army of good raptors, DPS would have been absolutely no issue at all. Things quickly took a turn for the worse, however, when the first boss spawned. To beat the Overseer, you have to fight each boss again. They are slightly weaker, I believe, than the regular bosses, but when it came to the dragon, this didn't matter at all. The dragon you fight in here still does the 20% fire damage. Following on from the Giga, who had just munched almost all of my raptors to the brink of death, this was not a good first boss to get. The dragon took out most of my remaining raptors, and when we did manage to take it out, we were left with just 3 remaining raptors. These 3 saviours then somehow managed to take out the monkey, although we did lose 1 in the process. With just 2 sadly beat up raptors on the brink of death, the odds are against us, until something amazing happened. Nope, I'm just kidding. The last remaining raptor and I went into a corner where we made our last stand. After 97 days, the raptors had carried me so far, and so nearly got me over the line at the end. It was a story of if buts and maybes, but this brings an end to our 100-day journey. Thanks for watching today's video, guys. If you did enjoy it, please do remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with notification alerts on. These videos do take an awful long time to make. Also, please do feel free to come over and follow me on Twitch. I regularly stream a couple of times a week doing these sort of challenges, so if you do enjoy that, come give me a follow over there. Enjoy the rest of your day, and take care.
Baby, you gotta let go. The drugs that you're taking, I can't